This is a short tutorial about how you can get social with Diigo, taking advantage of all of the different following, sharing, and subscription options. Beginner users usually get familiar and comfortable with the core bookmarking features of Diigo first, basically just using it as an online bookmarking tool or favorites list. This video assumes that you have at least this little bit of working knowledge. Please check out my 15-minute bootcamp for beginners if you are brand new to Diigo and the world of social bookmarking. But if you're ready to take that next step and truly experience the social part of social bookmarking, you're in the right place. Now, there are many ways to approach following, sharing, and subscribing using Diigo. While this may seem confusing at first, it's actually a very, very good thing. Why? Well, basically as a technology facilitator, I see this sort of thing all the time. Different people simply have different ways of working, and I believe that both good software and good technology training ought to take this into account. Some people don't mind having 20 different tabs open in their browser all day and all night long, and like to have a full-featured Diigo website open in one of them. A lot of people, myself included, find it annoying to visit dozens of websites they have associated with all the various services that we use, or blogs we read, or whatever. Inevitably, people need to refine their workflow. Personally, I use Feedly, which is a purpose-built newsreader to keep up with hundreds of different blogs and websites in one central location. At our school, we teach our students to use readers like this to follow all of their class websites and homework calendars. So, for some people, it may make sense to have all colleagues, students, or other sets of Diigo bookmarks pushed out to these same sort of newsreaders. With Diigo in particular, I personally prefer to rarely, if ever, visit the actual Diigo website. Bookmarking and reading those bookmarks is fundamentally an in-browser experience. I shouldn't need to visit a separate website, most of the time at least. Some folks still use their email as their home base and the primary way that they stay organized. Diigo understands all this. With the various sorts of Diigo toolbars, Diigolets, and buttons that can be added to your browser, there isn't a need to go to the main site for most day-to-day work. For me, it's basically when I want to do some serious organization, or adjusting my settings, doing some bulk tagging, bookmark editing, or other sorts of tasks. Short story long, you need to understand all of the various options if you want to create a workflow that's right for you. Another reason to get a handle on the different types of sharing is that it enables you to more easily share with a greater variety of people, including people that don't use Diigo at all. Fear not, most of the things I'm going to describe are reasonably straightforward regardless. Options, options, options. We're going to start by describing the basic ways to subscribe and share, but we also want to cover some of the more useful but lesser known ways of doing it. Bear in mind that sharing and subscribing are basically two sides of the same coin. We'll start by describing how to follow an individual. Obviously, these are the same instructions you'll need to give someone in order for them to follow you and access resources that you want to share. The most basic way to share your library with the world is simply to give them the link. All Diigo user libraries have a unique address which is based on the username. My username is Mr. Peters, so the address to my library is diigo.com/user/Mr. Peters. All you need to do is give someone this address, post it on a blog or a website, email it, or write it on the blackboard, whatever you want to do. It's usually a good idea to use the old cut and paste in order to get the address exactly right. Similarly, each one of your tags and lists also has a unique public address which can be easily shared. This allows you to direct colleagues or students to a particular part of your library rather than the whole thing. The easiest way to do this is simply to go to your library, click on the tag or the list, and then just copy the address from the address bar in your browser. So, for example, if I just wanted to share my EdTech resources with a colleague, I could just click on the EdTech tag and then come up here to my address bar and then just copy this address. If you look closely at the syntax, the pattern is pretty straightforward. diigo.com/user/Mr. Peters or your username / the name of the tag. You can ignore this junk at the end if you want, although it'll do no harm to the link if you accidentally copy it and share it. Sharing a custom list that you've created is precisely the same. If you've created a list, you'll find them down here. You can just choose one of them, click on the link, and then you can just come up to the address bar and copy the address. Now, in the case of lists, they actually provide you with a share button, which will allow you to get a nice, clean, easy to copy and paste permalink. So you can just take it from right there as well. The great thing about sharing all of these simple links is that it doesn't require that the recipient even have a Diigo account. These are public links which anyone can follow, whether or not they're Diigo members or are logged into Diigo. It's important to bear in mind that everything you post to Diigo is public by default. Let me repeat, your bookmarks library is totally public. Now, you can flag certain bookmarks as private, but unless you have, everything is open to the public. This isn't a big deal, I don't think, as long as you know it at the outset. In fact, it's the reason why sharing all of these public links is so easy. In the same way that your Diigo library, all of your tags, and each one of your lists all have unique web addresses which can be shared, a feature of Diigo that many people don't know about is that you can subscribe to each one of those using an RSS feed as well. Without digressing into a whole RSS tutorial, suffice to say that if you look for the RSS symbol while browsing a Diigo library, you can subscribe to the whole or part of the library using RSS. Then, whenever that library, or list, or tag is updated, you will receive that news in your RSS reader. Like I mentioned, I use Feedly, but there are countless others. Depending on the browser you use, and whether you already have a newsreader installed, when you click on the RSS symbol, usually found at the bottom of the page, you'll either be offered a chance to subscribe, or like me, you'll be taken to a page of XML gibberish. But all I need is the address, which I will copy and quickly take over to my newsreader in order to allow me to subscribe manually. Just like this. Add content, paste the address, and now I can add that entire feed to my Feedly library. Obviously, subscribing to yourself isn't a lot of fun, so let me take you through that example again, this time using John's library. Now, in this particular case, there's even a little bit of a technical problem. I scroll all the way to the bottom of the first page of his feed, and I don't see the RSS button where it should be. No matter, I know a little workaround that may help you as well. All I need to do is go up to the address bar and add a /RSS before the user, and then button or no button, that brings me to the RSS feed for John's entire library. So all I have to do again is copy the address, move over to Feedly, go add content, and I can manually add John's feed to my RSS reader. Of course, depending on the RSS reader that you use, the process of subscribing to new content might be a little bit different. So, what are the advantages of using RSS feeds in order to follow your Diigo? Well, first and foremost, I already use Feedly, which means I can follow all of my Diigo feeds using my already established workflow without adding yet another app to my daily routine. Also, and I'll just flip down to my Diigo folder here, notice how Feedly presents the Diigo feed in beautiful visual magazine style. In terms of browsing, I just think it looks nicer, and I'm more likely to browse through the links looking for useful resources. Also, Feedly, and other sorts of readers as well, offer lots of interesting ways to organize my feeds. So look down here, you see that I'm keeping all of my Diigo links saved into one particular folder. I could keep all my colleagues in one folder, I could keep a class set of student feeds in a particular folder, and then it's very easy to follow them all at the same time just by clicking on the folder. So that's very useful as well. Again, before we move on, just remember that virtually every tag has its own RSS feed, so if I just scroll all the way to the bottom, there's the RSS button, and the same thing with your lists as well. So if you go to your library and look at each one of these lists and scroll to the bottom, you're likely to find an RSS button for that as well. Of course, like Facebook, Twitter, and lots of other services, Diigo offers its own built-in method for following other Diigo users. Diigo calls this adding to your network. Again, it's important to remember that Diigo's network is more like Twitter than it is like Facebook, in that almost everything on both Twitter and Diigo is pretty much public anyways. So adding someone to your network simply provides a convenient way to subscribe to their content. If you think about it, that's pretty different from services like Facebook, where most users keep the majority of their content private, at least somewhat, and the friends list basically defines who's permitted to see it. Again, this isn't a criticism of Diigo per se, but definitely something to be aware of. Regardless of the fact that it really doesn't provide you with a great deal more privacy, you can still prevent people from adding you to their network under Settings, Personal Preferences, and then down here under Follow Settings. Obviously, if you're going to be using these network features with students or colleagues, it's probably worth reminding them to check their settings. Assuming that all the settings are in order, if you've already been given the link to the person whom you'd like to follow, simply go to their library and look for the follow button. Similarly, just giving somebody the address to your library is probably the easiest way for them to follow you, again, just by hitting the follow button. So, for example, I know the address to John's Diigo library, so I can just paste it in and hit enter, and then click the following button. Again, if you know the person's Diigo username, you don't actually need to know the whole address because all Diigo addresses are the same. Diigo.com/user/the username. So if you've got the username, you're all set. Notice that while you're following people, you can also add them to different contact lists, which may be useful if you're following the activity of different sorts of people, students and colleagues for example, and you want to keep all of the links sorted separately. Of course, if actual groups is what you want, the Diigo Groups function is one of its best features, but we'll leave groups for the third part of my Diigo trilogy because it's a pretty big topic all by itself. Before leaving the Network tab, there are a couple other useful features related to following that are worth a mention. All of these tools allow you to find Diigo users to follow, whether you know them or whether you don't. The first and most interesting of these, I think, is the Search Diigo Users of Interest, which you'll find right here. This tool allows you to search Diigo for other users to follow. You can search by real name or email. This is a useful tool, obviously, if you're looking for somebody specific. You can also search for people based on tags they commonly use or sites that they have previously bookmarked. This is useful if you're looking to add people to your network who share the same sort of interests. For example, if I search for the tag EdTech, which stands for Educational Technology, Diigo returns a list of all sorts of people who have lots of resources tagged as EdTech. I could start following them or simply browse their library looking for cool stuff. This works for any tag, so no matter what you're looking for, Diigo can act as sort of a search engine, except that all of the resources are curated by real human beings, not Google algorithms. The next feature, See If Your Friends Are on Diigo, basically searches your email contact lists and tries to match your contacts to existing Diigo users. Yahoo, Google, including apps for education domains, and Outlook are supported, or you can search by specific email address. Finally, there's an option to invite friends by email. This function is basically to invite people who are not existing Diigo users to join Diigo with a personal email. This might be useful if you want to get your whole class registered onto Diigo and you already have a spreadsheet or other email list to work from. So, in my humble opinion, those are some of the most important and useful ways that two individuals can share resources with each other using Diigo. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. Diigo can also share individual links, or you can even print out all of your links onto a text file and save it that way. And we haven't even touched upon one of Diigo's most useful features, and that's participating in Diigo groups. But we'll have to leave that till next time. Hope this was helpful. Stay tuned.